Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Francis Sifo, and I want to welcome you guys to another interesting and beautiful episode of Money Talks. Money Talks is all about conversation about personal finance, money, and wealth, right? For me, for the longest time, I feel like a lot of the conversations that have been had around personal finance and conversations, most people don't have it. So you go to most homes, we are not having those conversations, right? And what that has led to is people getting out of school, starting jobs, and then literally struggling with their finances. And it's a big struggle for me. For the longest time, it has been a big struggle, really trying to find a way around my finances. And there are a lot of things you read in books that it sounds all really nice and all sweet in the ears, but the reality and in terms of making sense of that doesn't really look like it makes a lot of sense. So on this episode, we are actually having a very interesting conversation about one topic that I like so much, and I know a lot of people are really excited to actually be part of it, is around savings, right? How do you even save? How do you even start off saving? How have you managed saving? Do you even do you even have enough money to even save in the first place? And how do you even approach saving? How do you think about saving? Are you thinking about saving as a way to invest? Are you thinking about saving just for emergencies? How do you approach saving? Or do you don't even save at all? Do you think like, okay, saving is crap, it's not for me? And I have my own weird thinking around saving and the banks, and we're all going to get into this long, interesting conversation. And I have like 3 amazing people that I call friends that are super, super amazing people that are our guests today. Thank you so much, Francis Sani, for being here on the show. Thank you, Moyosala Kara, my amazing party for life, for being here today. And Temitope Kundaya, thank you so much, guys, for being part of the show today. So let's jump right in. I think my first question really is, do you have savings? And when did you actually start saving? Or if you've not, obviously, if you don't have savings, it's likely you're not saving at the moment. So let me throw a curveball. The way Sani is laughing, it seems like this question is
No.
actually a very interesting spot.
I'm happy to get started, right? And it's because I fall on the... So I would say that I used to have savings, but I don't have savings anymore.
Nice.
There was a time when I used to have savings. So I started saving after I read a really interesting book. I'm not sure if you guys have read it, which is I think it's How to Get Rich or something. The Richest Man in Babylon by George S. Clason. Right.
Really good book.
Absolutely changed my life. I think I was in second year in school or then. But again, I didn't have money to save that time, right? But the thinking was just essentially putting at least 10% of your income somewhere, right? Where you can essentially get either just compound it over time. So that was when I started saving. But I think for me, along the line, and that's like when I posted it on Twitter, something I put in there was that how do you save when you're running a business or when you're investing actively, particularly when you're running a business? I wouldn't even you go the investment route, because when you're running a business, a lot of the cash flow is coming directly out of your pockets, right? And I've been in that situation over the past 3 to 5 years where I'm actively running a business, and a lot of, especially if it's a business that is not non-cash flow positive, right? A lot of the money that is supposed to go into my
It's
savings
just going out of your pocket,
going into the business, right? So I would say I started saving and then I stopped saving to focus more on channeling most of my cash flow into my own business. That's it on my own end.
Interesting thing to explore there. Hi, Moya. Can you hear us clearly?
Hi, I hope you can hear me because my internet tonight is just being really childish.
Choppy.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So I was asking, do you have savings, and when did you actually start saving? When did you start your own journey into like, okay, say, okay, you know what, I need to have savings for myself? How has that started, and when did that start for you?
I think that my journey into saving, just like Francis said, also started accidentally. Well, it wasn't accidental. I was saving for a purpose. I was still a student and I wanted to travel. I wanted to go to a different province in South Africa, and I went out. It was enjoyment that basically prompted my savings, long story short. And
Nice.
so that's how I started saving. And till tomorrow, enjoyment is still the key thing for me when it comes to saving, because I know that there is a time that I want to retire. There is a time that I don't want to have to, be attached to any one employer. Key reasons for saving. And if
Okay.
have
So
plans, like some future plans that I need to save towards. For example,
that's very pretty interesting. Like, so you're saving, you are more driven from a saving perspective
I think my
towards like
internet
a
is
defined goal,
lagging.
whether it's for
Okay.
enjoyment or even for retirement.
Yes.
Talk about how you doing, bro? Good.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
So I was saying, what about you? How's your own journey into like trying to actually actively save, and when did that start for you as well?
How you doing, guy? I can hear you. All right, yeah, definitely. And how would I put it? I've been saving for a very long time. Because I've been dabbling in
Oh, the network is a bit.
different things.
Are you still there?
Try to run survive businesses, and also how would I put it? Your regular income as much as
We're losing you,
every
Talk,
other
but we can
person
hardly
with
hear
salary
you.
income 95. So yeah, saving that also a deeper thing called financial priority, because if you are currently where you are, as it is as a person growing up in the country, you understand the issues that exist in one. You need to prioritize how you spend money, because I think one of the ways of everyone wants to get rich quick, but there's no rich quick means to actually get rich. If not, everyone will be rich, right? So savings is actually
Now,
getting like that that you must do, and it's also like in terms of building financial discipline. In terms of building financial discipline,
Talk,
so
but
when I
we're
started, I
losing
said
you. You're going in and out.
I've been saving regularly for a very long time, but I think actively was as
Okay, I don't know.
savings apps becoming popular. It just became a very good put a good percentage of my income. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe also let me even just also chip in for my own. And I think for me, right, there was a point where it didn't even make sense to even be thinking about saving, because you're just trying to, first of all, you just want to be able to be able to even cover bills, right? And like what Sunny said, I remember when I was running my former business I was doing, and all of your cash flow is actively being invested in there. And one interesting day, I sat down and I did like a pen and paper, and I did like a quick calculation. And I realized that, you know what, I actually had a lot of money, because I looked at how much I was spending every year, and I realized I actually had cash, but it's just that I couldn't really see that cash because everything was going into that business, and it felt like the business wasn't taking care of me the way I was trying to take care of the business. And I'm like, dude, man, this is tough. So I made a very deliberate decision. I said, okay, you know what, at this point, I'm going to put a certain amount into this business, because I also need to take care of me, right? I need to take care of myself. I need to prioritize me as well. Like a lot of people talk about it in the sense of saying, hey, pay yourself first and all of that. It's really hard. But I realized that, look, if I didn't make that decision, I wouldn't also be able to walk away from that business at a certain point to say, okay, you know what, I've been doing this for a year. I've been doing this for this number of years. This business I need to make this business start trying to take care of itself. Otherwise, I will always be the one supporting it, and it will never really, I will not go anywhere financially, and the business is also struggling, right? And that was a very hard call for me, because obviously you invested 2-3 years of your life doing the same thing, and you're like, if I stop now, this is like, what does that mean? But I think like taking that decision to look at that holistically helped me, because financially, I was able to then say, okay, you know what, part of that income, I could put it into something else. And then he forced me to say, hey, this business, how do you then survive on your own? And at a certain point, if you can't survive on your own, okay, maybe it's time I actually walk away from this, even though it's really, really hard. And, you would have loved to do this, but hey, I'm not just looking at this from an emotional perspective. I'm also looking at it from a financial perspective. Look, I've committed this much resource. Maybe it's just too early. Because sometimes it's not that the idea is bad or that the business is a bad business. It might just be the timing is off a bit. It might just be that the right timing and the right infrastructure is not just there yet. And you just need to pull back a bit and then come back at it when all those things align a bit more. So, yeah. Okay. So let's just jump right in again. I think the next question I actually wanted to ask is, what has been the biggest challenge any of you have faced in trying to save, right? What has been like the biggest, toughest part of, okay, you know what, I want to save, I want to be able to, or whether it is for a goal, for enjoyment, or just as that discipline of putting a certain amount out, what has been like the biggest challenge for you in trying to actively save? And have you been able to consistently do it? Anybody can start, so I'm opening it up now. Okay, Moya, what do you think? What has been like your biggest
Nigeria
challenge?
has been the greatest challenge I've experienced trying to save. Because when you get outside and you start to drive, your car will enter pothole, and there you go. Another tire that you
All
have
that saving is gone.
purchase, an expense that you never planned for. I mean, yeah, Nigeria has been my greatest challenge. But I mean, let me let others speak.
That's really interesting, right? I think about say Nigeria from my own standpoint, okay. I think Tokwe is speaking. Tokwe, do you want to go? I should go.
Tokwe is going in and out.
Yeah. Let me go. So I would say just like Moyo said, right? I think for me, right, it's not just in that sense, but also
all right,
having dependencies.
You're sorry.
Right. So from either a family standpoint, either like you having to just especially in a case where you come from a background where the responsibility is on you to be able to, in a way, support the family. Right. So for instance, in my own case right now, me and my siblings we're planning on getting a house for our parents and building a house for our parents. Right, like
Kudos,
that's a massive project, right? How do you that automatically affects your savings, right? I would say like one of the biggest challenges would be just having all of these other responsibilities always come up. But like you said, it's also the thing with savings is that just like with life, things would always come up, right? That's just the truth. Expenses would always be a constant. So there has to be an intentional effort to be able to overcome those challenges. I would say just like having to be responsible to your family and also having other dependencies that you have to attend to, either from if it's a business or something else. Those are some of the things that actually affect, at least in my own personal case, ability to save.
Okay. Tokwe, are you is the network a bit better now? So I want to throw an idea out. There's something that I talked about in the very first episode of the show, which was about performing a personal financial audit, right? And one of the key things from that session that for me that like over the last 2 years, doing that exercise for me blew my mind in seeing how that changed how I looked about my finance was the fact that it was more around just basically capturing what are your expenses, like the core expense you spend on a monthly basis, and then also saying, one of the things I realized initially was when I was earning and I was just spending, there was no limit. So I couldn't, it was whatever was left after my expenses was what I saved, right? But when I started becoming very intentional about my expenses and say, okay, you know what, Francis, what are the things you spend on monthly that you know you must spend on? Capture those items clearly defined, and then say, for those things that I will not plan for, I can't plan for, I don't know what that would be, like Nigeria happening to your car and this other activity happening and all of those unexpected expense, I'm also going to put a capped amount on it, right? To say, hey, this every month, this is what I'm going to commit to this. If it is more than this, it will wait to the next month, right? As part of my own discipline, just so that people also can set that expectation when they are coming to me that, hey, yes, I will help you if it is still available in my miscellaneous budget, but if I'm maxed for the month, because the interesting thing is that, and to keep myself to it, immediately I pull out that money, every other thing that is left, I'm either investing or saving. And weirdly, for most people, even though we are talking about saving, I'm also very weirdly and interestingly enough, I don't keep so much in my saving, right? Because if you think about the dynamics of how the banking system is, right? Inflation is about I think the latest report is about 16% plus, right? And then you think about it that your bank is probably offering you only about 1% per annum. So if you leave your money in the bank, it's obviously like the worst decision you could also be making. But yes, there are better other alternatives to also do those saving. There are a lot of interesting platforms now and apps that are giving you way much more decent interest. So for me, as long as it is way better interest than what the bank is giving me, obviously it's a win. So ideally, I'm not obviously saving a lot of money with the banks because there's really no value. Every day my money is sitting in that bank account with my bank at the moment, it is actually losing value, right? Yeah. All of my banks and the relationship I have with my banks is because of different value they offer. In fact, one of the interesting episodes we're going to be having is even exploring why people use the banks they use, because yeah, that is another interesting conversation. I'm seeing a lot of rants on Twitter about the banks and the issues with our banking system and really what value does your bank offer you? But for me, really, is if you're going to save and you're thinking about saving, whether it is for enjoyment or whatever, one of the things I have clearly seen is that the bank obviously do not offer that significant, at least the interest rate is so ridiculous compared to what the inflation rate is, that by the time you save that money, it has lost a lot of value just sitting in the bank. Right, so you are probably better off, even though you want to save, to use other much more digital platforms that exist in this present day to use those to save, right? And one interesting thing that I've been using, at least in terms of my own saving, is like things like my service charge, because at least I pay on a quarterly basis or like maybe every 6 months. So every month I put out a certain portion of it, and then at least it's enemy interest rather than just sitting in my bank, and so I get that double benefit. I get to expense it every month, and then every 3 or 6 months, I'm also earning some decent returns on it before I pay that bill out. So those are like some very interesting ways that I have also approached it. But one of the ways I think is for family, one of the things I've also seen is that for family, a good way might be like for parents, put them on the budget and put them on your bill like consistently, because it just helps. Like my mom, my dad is already late, so like my mom, she's on my bill every month. A certain figure goes to my mom. My siblings, thank God, they're all grown, they all are doing well, and everybody's like, look, just be adults. Let's go. Everybody, yeah, we'll support each other, but I can't do urgent money. It has to be planned. If you want us to do something, you're thinking of doing something, we need to plan it, right? Because if it is all urgent, I will try as much as possible for my emergency fund and stuff, but you can't just expect that I will pull out all of that resource, because if you do that as well, one of the things I've seen is that it also hampers you financially, because if you are not doing well financially, then your ability to help every other person in the family or
reduced
is also reduced. So it might seem like, oh, they will be like, oh, this guy is not, but it's also like, dude, I'm doing this because I also want to be in a better capacity to help everybody collectively. And so I will support you if you're thinking about starting a business or doing things that help you generate income, but I'm not going to fund your expense or fund your lifestyle, because if I do that, I will always keep doing that every single time. And that doesn't help anybody. Tokwe, how is your network now? Is it better? Okay, you're still not getting a hold of him. Tokwe, maybe just try disconnecting and reconnecting again.
Yeah, instantly, right? From the way I see, as we call this family thing, we call it black tax in the country.
But we are still losing you. So maybe try reconnecting, right?
Hello, can you hear me?
Just try. Okay, I think I can hear you now. Okay, just try reconnecting again. Let's see. Okay, let's go on. While Tokwe tries joining back into the room. Okay, so I think the next question I wanted to talk about is, yes, we've talked about like the biggest challenge. What has been like the biggest thing you've also learned from that experience? Like all of going through this entire journey, what has been some of the things that you've learned about you and about dealing with finance and dealing with money and dealing with, and okay, you know what? This is how I am. This is who I am relatively to how I deal with my money. And you know what? This is what one of the things that I've learned and has become like something that has stuck with you over time that has helped you in terms of even being able to save, become better with your savings generally, or better with your finances generally.
Well, I'll say for me, just before more chips in, for me, I would say so what I've learned is that like having that core discipline and having platforms or tools that allow you to be able to effect that discipline is really important. So by that, I mean, so if I'm saving towards something, or if I want to put money aside towards something, it's really important to have a platform where I can put it and I don't have access to it. Right? Like once that money goes, I know that money is gone because I've learned that I would always, I'm a, we have this thing, some of us in our family, we like to spend money. When money is available, we don't mind, we don't mind spending the money.
Say, boy, let's
So,
go out. Let's go have a
yeah,
nice time.
so I've just learned that, and it's also important to be honest to myself that if I say this is a goal I have, and this is the portion of my earnings that I want to push towards this goal, when that money comes in, I do that once and I forget about it, and I don't go back into that bank.
Okay, Mo.
I pretty much was going to say the same thing. I think it's just really having that core discipline and also using tools that will help you become more disciplined. Like I know that there's the Safe Lock on PiggyVest or Piggy Bank. There's different platforms. I think like now most banks also have a thing where you can actually save towards something and it won't be accessible for a period of time. So sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's a year. So those are very good for like saving towards a particular event. And I think that for me personally, also just having a figure in mind, like, so I write, I'm a writer, so I write everything down. And if I write down that figure and I know, okay, every single month, this is how much I want to save, it stays in my head. So even the months where for whatever reason, I don't do what I was supposed to do, I feel like I am indebted to myself. So the next month I know that, okay, I need to save more because last month I wasn't able to save my goal figure for that month. So also doing that and writing it down and just putting all the figures down, pen on paper, usually is very helpful for me.
Talk about, is the network better now? We've been losing you in and out. Okay, so we actually have somebody. There's a comment from the live stream saying, I agree with the lady when she said Nigeria is the greatest problem to saving. The system in countries like the United States take care of more than 70% of what Nigerians fast and pray for. Oh my God.
Yeah, preaching to the audience there.
Okay, well, this.
But it's the truth. Nigeria. It's the truth, right? It's the truth because like there's a lot of stuff. I think the best example is really what Moyo said about like potholes, right? Like imagine if you didn't have potholes. So I think I got this stat once that we change our shock absorbers. Like Nigeria is one of the countries that imports the most shock absorbers in the world, right? Because they always get these faults, right? And other countries, other developed countries, they rarely have to change their shock absorbers, right? So it's just crazy.
Yeah. Talk about, can you hear us? Are you still with us? Oh. Tokwe's network today is just really
Tokwe's network is betraying him today.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So we're talking about what is for you, what has been like your biggest learning on your savings journey? What has been in all of this as you started trying to save and build up that habit? What have been some things that have helped you to actually improve that over time to become better with saving and managing your finances? Okay.
So I believe in the principle of compounding. I'm sorry. I believe in the principle of compounding, right? Um, Compounding in the sense that if you put money today, just like you want to build an ocean,
This is Nigeria also doing us this thing,
and
you know. When you can't even have
small
stable
little
internet to do
it tends to
I was
come.
gonna say
So
that,
most
but I refrained from it. I was like, you know what? I'm not Nigerian tender.
Oh boy. Okay. So probably we keep losing you. Okay, so we'll just go on and we'll try and see. So I think the next question I wanted to ask is, like in terms of like your financial priority, you know, everybody has like different things you like. Okay, you want to invest, you have your expense, you obviously want to obviously save. And like I said, everybody's saving for different things. Moyo is obviously our enjoyment minister. I didn't know this much. Now I know. You know, at least I know how to start planning, you know. You're saving for different stuff. Where does saving sit for you in your own financial priority? Like in your line of things, when you're thinking about, okay, you know what, as this money is coming in, does it sit in your high priority, or is it like more a low priority item for you, or a mid priority, or like savings is really like a high priority item for you in that sense? Moya?
So for me right now, savings is actually quite high on my priority list, just because
Okay.
also of like some of my next steps that require me to have a certain amount of money for those goals to be achieved. And so right now, like the very first thing I'm thinking of, I always tell people that before I get paid, I'm already broke, because I'm already thinking that, okay, this much has to go here and everything else is my spending money. So no matter what is coming in, there's always something that's going towards saving. And I think that for the longest time, it's actually always been like that, just because, you know, it's important to save for a rainy day. You just don't know what could happen, you know, tomorrow. So yeah, it's quite high.
Sunny, Francis?
So I think the way I see savings, and I know this is very. I think you have another question that ties into savings being more like a way for you to be able to get to investments. The way I see savings is um, I see savings as a wealth creation vehicle, right? So yes, there are instances where I want to save towards a certain target or a certain goal, right? But I'm not the kind of person that will put savings and go put it in the bank, right? The way I think of savings is to say, oh, I want to get something in 3 months, right? I put this money, but I don't put it in the bank. I put it into an asset that generates interest, right? Either a mutual fund or whatever it is that can generate interest within the time frame that I might need to get access to it. So I usually break it into two categories. What
Okay.
can I liquidate in case of an emergency,
Emergency.
right? So do I put my savings in Bitcoin? Do I put some in some other assets, in mutual funds, or something that is even just converting it to dollars, such that if I need to, even if I have to lose on the FX rate when I'm exchanging it back, right? I know it's liquid. I can easily liquidate it. While there's a different portion of that savings that actively goes into the wealth creation bit. So I would say savings probably sits under investment or wealth creation in my financial priority right now. Yes, I think similar to Moyo, I'm also at that point where I've reduced the amount of money I put into the business that wasn't bringing any money in. So now it's time to try to channel some of that money into wealth creation, but also just having a bank that I can go to in case something comes up.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. I think Takwe is coming back. Why Takwe is joining back, and I think for me, right, one of the way I think about it is that I think savings for anybody that is just starting off on their financial journey obviously should be like your first high priority, right? Because it helps you build just understanding how you handle and deal with money before you even start thinking about investing. A lot of people want to jump into investing, and a lot of time you don't even understand what it means to invest, the risk associated with investing, right? And I think savings is a way to just get that discipline, right, in terms of consistently putting money out there and building that discipline around it. The way, like I said, the way I approach it is like what Moyo said as well. That is purely me. Immediately I get paid the very next day. In fact, if you're not careful, that same day that account is empty. We probably not have anything in that sitting in that account, because one of the interesting things I did like about a year ago. I took an Excel sheet and I literally planned for my every single dime that enters my account. So like I am that very, very meticulous with money now. And it took me a while to get here, but for me now, the way it is that immediately my salary gets in, the next day or the next 2 days, what is going into the expense is going into different expense. I'm sending out everybody their own alert is going out. What needs to go into any emergency fund is going in there, and whatever needs to go into my investment is going right into it immediately, right? I think that is really very, very interesting. And I think one of the things will be, I think eventually I'll probably share on the channel like a link to one of the templates that like the personal template that I've built. And for me, it's just something very simple to help me track because also I realized that if I was not careful, I would lose track of what I was saving or investing in and how well they were doing. So for me, it was just create a single sheet where I can see everything that I put my money in. And every year I can look back and say, okay, what did I put money in this year? What did I invest in? What did I save in? How well did they do at the end of the year? Do I want to continue this the next year? Right. And so just kind of reevaluate all of that and say, okay, you know what? This investment thing that I'm doing makes a lot of sense. I'm going to double down on this in the new year. Oh, this item that I'm saving or using. So there are a couple of savings options I used like 2 years ago that now I'm like, it doesn't longer make sense, because at that time the rates were good. It was like 11% or 12% per annum. But at inflation rate, it means that yes, it's still better than the banks, but at the end of the day, I'm still losing money actively at the end of every year. And I'm like, I hate losing money, you know? So now I'm like, hey, I need to figure out where else to move that money into, something else that, so now in terms of how I treat saving is very low priority for me, because as long as beyond, I think I'm very, very simple in terms of like my own cost structure, right? As long as I'm able to take care of my core bills, there's really every other thing, 99% of the time is pumping into, okay, trying to actively invest that and trying to use that into something like what you said, Sunny, into something that is able to create his own income. Because as I'm working, I want my money to be working as hard as I am, right? Like that is how I'm thinking about it. Every single penny should be working twice as hard. A couple of assets that I've invested in has been pretty good. Like you mentioned, some for people that did like crypto over the last couple of months, it's been crazy, right? Some people have done 3x their money in the last month. Like sometimes you think about it as like literally madness, right? So it's really, really interesting because, and a lot of these things for me is I dabble a bit. I understand how the asset fundamentally works before I then add it into one of the things I'm doing. But for me now, what I think about in terms of, if you think about it in terms of like saving is more towards like emergency fund and anything that is relating to like bills that I know they are coming up in the next 2-3 months. So things like utilities so I already can see them, they are coming. I can, so okay, you know what, I'm going to save this fund because I need to use it in a couple of months. And there's really no point putting it in an asset where I don't want to convert, right? There's no point putting it there and I have to liquidate it at the end of, it's just, yeah, as much as possible, the way I'm trying to, my goal now is how do I actively put this money away for the next 5 years? Right? How do I build systems over like the next 5 years that I get to that point financially where I can lay back and all of these accumulated investments and savings that I've built out can take care of me, you know what, right? So that is it for me. Toby, can you hear us clearly now? Is your network better now? Toby, are you there? Oh, man.
I'm sure Toko would have so much insights to share.
Because I can't get in. Somebody mentioned something about mentioning something about black tax. You know what? There's actually going to be a full episode where we're going to explore black tax, but I think we will actually want to even explore it a bit. We can just touch on it a bit. But yes, that is a full conversation because I've heard people talk about that a lot around dealing with the black tax, right? And what are your thoughts, guys, about black tax? How do you guys, from your own perspective, why I even have you guys today? And like I said, there's going to be a full episode where we're going to explore the dynamics of black tax and how people have managed to blend and deal with that over time. But how are you guys? Have you guys experienced the issue of black tax, and how have you kind of managed to deal with black tax in your own situation?
If I may go first, I would say that what I've learned about black tax is that it's always going to be there. And when you have something that's always going to be there, you shouldn't necessarily focus on it. And I'll give an example. So let's say 5 years ago, again, I think it also depends on the family dynamics, right? We all come from different backgrounds. So I think the way black tax and the dynamics and the complexity of it would vary from family to family. That's just the truth, right? Because in some cases, some family might not, they might not be as understanding as others. I think in our own case, like I'm lucky, or my family were lucky because even though we are from Edo State, our parents went out of Edo State super early and we're based in Ife in Osun State, right? I don't have any cousins. Like there are no cousins, there's no extended family, there's no nobody, it's just me and my folks, me and my family. So there's nobody calling me from one village to say, Uncle, one thing. I don't have that. If I have any black tax, it's based off relationships I've built, maybe people that I've built and I've supported over the years and who come and say they want to be able to do something. So, but my point is that it would always be there. And I think I understood really early that black tax can eventually potentially make you black, in the sense that it can make you born. Black tax can burn you, because what black tax does is that it puts a ceiling on your earnings, on your earning potential if you're not careful, right? So let's say you start off making 150K, and at 150K, you're already sending 50 to 100K to your family, right? It is definitely going to affect you in multiple ways. You're not going to be able to get a new apartment in a better place. You're not going to be able to push up your apartments. You're not going to do some certain things that could potentially increase your earning potential. And the plain truth is that if your family members have been suffering before you start getting money, they will survive a couple more years on a little percentage of money that you decide to give them, whether they like it or not, right? So my own approach, and it's something I always do with my mom. I'm like, she would like say, "Oh, let's do this." I was like, madam, wait, this is what I can give to you now, right? But the interesting thing is that over the years, because I put a cap on it really early on, the portion, like the amount of black tax I have to pay now, is more than 5 of what I have. What I am, it's almost similar to what I was earning when I could have started paying it back then. But now it is not so significant on my earnings, right? So I think it's about putting a cap on it early, and then gradually, as you then increase your earning capacity, then allocating a little bit more to it, because the truth is that people will survive.
Exactly. I think that's like the biggest nail on it. Like, with or without you sending that black tax, they will survive. Top boy, are you there? Top boy, why is it that it is today that the ISP decided to do this? Why? We need to query that your ISP. We need to know who we are using. Hi Moyo, have you ever dealt with black tax, and how have you kind of dealt with it if you've had?
Okay, so I think that with speaking from a personal perspective, I think I've been very, very lucky that, well, first of all, it's just my mom and my siblings, and my mom is very big on all her kids becoming self-sufficient, and she's still very, she's still working, so she's very big on, like, even when you want to give her money, she'll be like, are you sure? Like, she'll ask you many questions. So what I do now is that, like, I just send her money at the beginning of the month, and like I send it once off, and she doesn't have a say. She has to absolutely accept it. And I think that Francis made a very good point. As you rise, your I guess whatever cap you've placed on how much you're giving to your parents also increases. I think that if they also have that understanding, then there is a common ground. Nobody's coming in the middle of the that something happened somewhere, or you have to quickly give this much money. I think that for my husband and I, we've both made it very clear to our parents as well, in that, hey, it might seem like sometimes we have money, but actually there is a plan for every single cent that comes into our account. And these are some of the plans that we can share. We tell them as well, these are some of our plans moving forward, so that they also have a appreciation of the fact that it's not just about the now, they're also building for the future. And so they are also very careful not to come in the middle. And I mean, at the start of the month, we give them both money. We know what it is, we've capped it. And the more, obviously, the more condition gets better, their own will also get better. So I think that there's just that general understanding. But I think that conversation needs to be had. That's the truth. Because if you don't have those necessary conversations, then there's a thing of entitlement or feeling like, oh, okay, you just don't want to give, you've now started your own family. That's why you don't care about us anymore. I think that when they know that they're also part of whatever plans you're trying to make as a family, and in the end, this is also for their own good, then everybody has an understanding, and we can all come to the party and everything.
I think that's very important, like, right? Because I think it's usually very interesting, because for me as well, like what you guys are saying, which is very interesting. I feel like when you even think about black tax, yes, predominantly it starts off with like family, but then you also realize that even extends to even friends and acquaintances. Like people are like, there's a lot of expectation, right? Oh, and I think we were having this conversation on one of the last episodes when we were talking about the very baseline fact. If you say, oh, you live in Lagos, any other person that is outside of Lagos just feels like, bruh, you're a big man in Lagos. I'm like, dude, calm down. Calm down. Or they hear anything about you in the news or anything about you out there, they see a press clipping or anything.
$50 million
like
round.
Calm down, it's not in my account. Just be calming down, right? And so there's all of that also brings a lot of expectation. People are like, oh, I asked you for money, and you tell people that, oh, sorry, I can't actually do this. And then they start taking offense. They're like, no, it's not obviously. I obviously want to help. I want to be able to support you. But I also won't do that in a way it puts me in a very financially delicate position as well, right? Because I also have things I also need to take care of. I obviously want to be able to do that and support you. And for me, I think one of the biggest things I've also learned in terms of thinking about my own journey and seeing about like how I went through, like paying my way through school and like even for my own wife and how our own journey as well, it has also taught me that, look, the importance of hustling. I've also seen that sometimes when, especially apart from like my mom, which obviously is elderly, right? For a lot more, if you're a young person, you're in the family, I'm not giving you money just for giving money's sake, because I feel like it creates a dependency and an entitlement mentality if you're not careful, right? Because they're like, oh, anytime they want, they can ask for it. And so I would rather say, okay, hey, you know what? If you are thinking about starting something that is income generating for you, or I'm thinking about starting a business, I'm thinking about going for a program that will help me start a business, that will help me do something else, that I obviously want to support, right? And obviously, it doesn't necessarily mean that I might be able to give you all the money at once. I can say, hey, you know what? Oh, this is what you are thinking of doing. Okay, you know what? Give me this time so that at least I can plan for it. I can put it in my financial plan, because I'm not just giving the money waiting for you to come and ask for it and collect it, right? But if it is, oh, give me this money, I want to buy stuff for myself. If it is your birthday, if it is celebratory, I can understand that. But just every month that you're expecting that I will just send you money to cover expenses, I feel like that will always put me in a place where there's that consistency dependency, and it doesn't help you and it doesn't help me, because it will create that feeling of consistent dependency on me, and over the long term it will even get worsened, because if tomorrow I tell you no, you feel offended that what's itself, and I'm like, no, let's even from the very get-go, let's just even already define it that, dude, I will not fund your expenses. But if you are thinking about, if it is your birthday, if it is something that is celebratory, it's Christmas, oh, okay, oh, Merry Christmas, something for you, we are celebrating. But on a normal month-by-month basis, no. If it's something that is supporting your learning, something that can help you improve your income, that can help you start up a business, then yes, that I see that, okay, if I'm able to support you in that level, it can improve your own earning capacity, and then it will even completely remove your dependency on me financially. Hallelujah. That is something that I definitely love, that I definitely want to support, because I think, yes, that helps you on the long term, and it helps me and it helps the entire family in that sense, right?
Yeah, just one last point to chip in, Francis. Something interesting that just came to mind, just around black tax, but from an extended standpoint, either from people that see you as mentors, or
Okay,
people that see you as someone that has blown. I'm not sure if Tokwe is back, but like for things like that, what I've learned, I don't know who mentioned it, but a couple of years ago, someone told me something that, especially when it
I'm
comes to
back.
borrowing people money, don't ever borrow people more than you can afford to lose. So if someone comes to me
Oh,
and tells me that they need
Yes,
100K,
yes.
I'll be like,
I
man,
concur.
wow, how do we? I empathize with you. I'm like, how are we going to find this money? This is great. Like, how are we going to find? What I can do is 10K. Oh, and interestingly, it's actually worked because when I know that this money I'm giving to you, I can afford to lose it, right? I don't necessarily put that pressure on myself because the truth is that because we've also been in that instances back when we used to also in even for some of us, it's still there right now where you know that you get cash, but some things just don't happen and that money doesn't come back, right?
mm,
But more interestingly, what I found out is that there are many times when people will come and say they need this, I'll say I don't have. And the truth is that people won't die. Yes, they might look at you as a bad person, but that does not change anything about you. So I use those two things to manage extended black bags. I don't give more than I can afford to lose, right? And if I don't have, I'll tell you I don't have. You're not going to use guilty conscience on me. And then, like, life goes on eventually.
mm.
Yeah.
All right, Tokwe, are you there now? Can you hear us now? Well, can you hear us? Okay. So
Please, I
let's
can hear
try
you.
and see if it. Okay, so somebody's asking from the comment section. It says, please share with us some of the platforms you are using to achieve your goals on savings. Guys, let me let you guys.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
So talk about what do you use to manage your savings at the moment? What apps do you use or what platforms do you use to manage your savings? Still going in and out. Okay. Moyo, what do you use to manage your own savings?
Francis, I feel like this is your question because
Oh
you're the
no,
king of
yeah,
apps.
it's like you should
But
probably do
for me
a
personally,
Twitter thread on it,
one,
Francis.
it's your question.
So
Honestly,
I've used quite a lot. For me, I'm very
yeah.
exploration. I like exploring, right? I started off. So the first app that I used properly when I wanted to start saving, I used Cowrywise, right? Because at that point, I think they obviously had like the best rates at that point in time. And obviously, like I said, I don't save with the banks because the rates with the banks obviously didn't make sense. And it was also good because I could lock the fund permanently and I can't touch it till end of maturity. So I did that and I've done that for quite a while now, right? And then interestingly enough, now obviously Audit is a good friend of mine and PiggyVest and they are fantastic stuff they are doing there. So now for all of my emergency fund and my bills, all those activities, small activities that I want to save towards, I use PiggyVest now because I also found it to be a very, very fantastic platform in the sense that it offers a lot more flexibility, right? You could save lock, you could put like in a flexi plan where it also earns interest, but it's not locked. And if you needed it. So for me, I use that for more like my emergency fund. So if I needed to pull out the cash quickly, I know I can pull it out without anything, but it's still there and it's earning me way better interest than if I left it in my bank account. So those are like the two central platforms that I use around everything that involves like saving, right? Obviously now with I'm switching things up a bit, but primarily now for a lot of my like emergency fund and my saving activity, I've started leaning heavily now on the PiggyVest platform, and because of like just the options he offers, I think for me it's just been fantastic. The rates are way better, way higher than what I was seeing across board. And there's something I also discovered recently, which is also an interesting hack I didn't know. So I invited my wife to also join the app, and she started using it. And I realized that when you put it on the safe lock, the interest from the safe lock also earns interest on the flex. And I'm like, oh shoot, double dipping. Okay, so that for me has been really, really interesting to also see that I could lock fund, and the lock fund already earns an interest, and that interest is also earning interest on its own. So I'm like, yeah, that really is a very fantastic way to play around it. So I was also obviously trying to get Odu on this episode, but she was busy because I also thought it would be very interesting to also hear our own thoughts around some of these things as well. But yeah, for me, I think they are doing something really fantastic, and you can even see it from the community and the feedback and the adoption that they are having around the product. So I think they are doing something really fantastic with that product. So yeah, those are like the two major platforms I use. And apart from that, I am very heavy on Excel sheets. My wife usually laughs at me. Almost every weekend, I go into my home office and I open up on my desktop computer. I have like a proper big screen desktop computer, and I open up the Excel sheet and I look at it every weekend. I'm like, okay, how are we doing? You know what? And I use the weekend to update from all my investments. I update all the positions again, and I look at the sheet anymore. I'm like, okay, good. Where are we? And I set a goal. So every year I set like a goal. Okay, this year I want to save this amount. I want to invest this amount. And it's both in, so like most people, obviously, I've also started thinking, I do that both in Naira and in dollars. Okay, I want to be able to do this in this currency. I want to be able to do this in this currency. And it has been an interesting way to see, like last year, I hit my target for my goal. I'm really excited to see how well I do this year. And for me, I think it has kind of spurred me to say, okay, you know what? Let's do it again this year. Let's do it again this year. So yeah, that's what I use. So I know you guys.
And Francis, we have to push you. We have to push you to share these templates, right? Before the next episode, we want to see the templates. Like just with that some information I put out. Yeah,
I'm going to probably do a live before the next guest episode, just talking through the template. I think that is something that will be interesting. Okay. So I'll probably just do an episode myself and just walk you through the template and how to think. At least how I thought through the template and how to think about it. So for me, there are like two interesting things around that template that I did. There's one that captures everything that reflects what I am saving and investing, like just shows me my position. And I name it every year. So I have a sheet for each year. So that way I can look back year on year to see, okay, how have I been doing over the years? Then I have a sheet that I have that basically says, this is how much income that I have coming in. What am I going to put it in? Right? And so month on month, I can say, okay, hey, on this platform, this amount is going here. This platform, this amount is going here. So it's already defined. I know that as the money is entering at that end of that month, except something fundamentally changes, something seriously fundamentally is changing, that money is going there, right? So if I'm saying, hey, I need to save this amount on this platform, I can see it there and I can see the entire breakdown for what I have available. And I think those two things kind of help me. And every month, as I do it, I mark those columns green so I can say, okay, you know what is done, and I can see how I'm doing against what I actually set out to do initially.
Francis, just to chip this in, just based off the last comment that Samson shared, is like I think that's tied to black tax. But I think this will also be interesting because I know you do this a lot. It's just sharing access to most people when they think of savings or wealth creation. Is very limited, right? So they think about it from a standpoint of mutual funds, saving for this, but also just sharing access to what are the other options for when you want to save and build wealth. But also number two, what are those options outside of the continent, right? How can people access global opportunities that they currently are not aware of right now?
That's very
just that's idea for one future episode.
If I'm ever going to talk about it, right, I'm obviously not going to be recommending it because obviously I'm not technically advising you to do it, but it will just be, at least I can talk through how I think about some of those things and allow people to ask questions and like talk through some of those things that I've used, like a couple of really amazing platforms that I've used. And I feel like what you mentioned, I feel like everybody's portfolio should have a mix of literally different type of assets, like you talked about, right? So I have like some bonds I bought a few years ago. That bond, the interest on the bond has been really fantastic, right? I have mutual funds that I'm doing. I have I'm very heavy on stocks, right? Obviously not Nigerian stocks because there's very little liquidity, at least from what I see in the Nigerian stock market. But you can see a lot of very high activity happening in other stocks globally. And there are platforms locally and globally you can use to access these stocks that can also be, if you understand it enough, that you can also explore, that are very, very interesting ways that I've also played around with. And just having a bit of everything, right? Obviously now there's a ban on crypto, but cryptocurrency obviously has also shown to be a very, very interesting angle, and all of that, the growth that has. Look at how like Bitcoin or Ethereum or all these other currency or BNB. I was just looking at charts a few days ago. I'm like, my mind is blown. I'm like, I missed out on BNB. It pinches me dearly. I'm like, I'm hoping that it drops back, it retraces a bit so I can potentially figure out how to get in. But it's really interesting to see. I was looking at a chart and I realized that over the last 6 months, crypto has literally done 5x. Right? And that is crazy. You know what it means to do 5 times. So whatever value you put in crypto, if you put in some money in crypto, like in Bitcoin, obviously now I don't know how, nobody knows whether it's going to do that 5x in the next. But just thinking about that, people that had their money in as at 6 months ago, today, they've done 5 times whatever they had sitting on crypto if they never even moved it out. Yeah. It's interesting. Obviously, a lot of people have sold out and made some changes, but for me, it's phenomenal. And it also speaks to one thing I finally learned in all of this. When you start thinking, which is why I said, like, for most people in their financial journey, the best starting point is saving. Because once you go the investment route, you need to understand risk. Right. Saving, a lot of the time, your saving is protected, right? There's a lot of protection around your saving. The likelihood is that nothing will happen to your savings. But the moment you decide to buy any investment, any form of investment, even this safest form, even like whatever it is, you need to know that there is an inherent amount of risk, and you need to understand what that risk is and be comfortable with it. And I feel like that is one of the biggest challenges I see a lot of people dealing with, where they are investing and they don't even understand the risk associated with the assets that they're investing in. And sometimes it can be really good. When there's a bull market, everybody's happy, it's so sweet. But then when you really know how people are and how people are emotionally with money is when there's a down market. Then it gets really messy, and everyone's like, I remember when coronavirus hit in March last year, right? When the pandemic, like when that peak hit, that okay, a lot of people needed to start working at home, and a lot of the stocks really started tanking heavily. Like, you need to really have strong hearts not to get out of that market. A lot of people jumped out and lost money. But for people that were able to say, you know what, I'll weather this market and just stick to it, a lot of those guys came out. There's one of the guys that I was following his portfolio. The guy closed the year 200% return on investment at end of December. It's madness. Like, you think about like 200%. So sometimes, because of some of those things that you get to see, when you see people saying, oh, so it speaks back to that, your risk tolerance. And I think that's one of the things I learned in one of my banks. So my best banker, right, I'm keeping them as a protected secret. My best bank to date that I finally discovered, a friend introduced me to them. One of the things they helped me realize was when I said, oh, I'm interested in investment, the first thing they asked me was to do an assessment to understand my risk tolerance, how comfortable I am if I was losing money. Because when you're making money, everything is fine, everybody's happy. The moment the market is not going your way, what are you going to do? Are you going to take your money out of the market? Are you going to stay in the market? What will you do? And understanding your risk tolerance will then help them advise you on the kind of assets that you probably should be investing in, because those ones, and obviously the less risky it is, the less the return is. But like I said, for most people starting off, you need to build up that tolerance. You need to be much more comfortable financially before you jump into very risky things. And there are some things that are they are technically not investments, they are scam. And we need to also call them out to say, hey, this shit is a scam. Yes, it's not just that it's risky, it's purely a scam. Stocks has its own risk. It can go up, it can come down. But if you look at one of the things somebody looked at and said, if you look at the chart for the stock market on a daily basis, it could go up and down, up and down, up and down. But most times, if you look at it over a year, you realize that even all those massive swings, if you look at it in a year time frame, it has been going up consistently. So it's a question of, are you sticking in there? So a lot of people are trading and they think they're investing. If you want to come and you say you want to invest, you need to be able to hold that asset for 4 to 5 years. It's not something you are trying to buy and offload in 3 months. That is not technically the way I approach investments. If you are thinking very long term, the likelihood is that 99% of the time you are losing so much more money than you will get just buying that position and holding it and staying there. Yep. Right? But yeah, that is just diving into a lot of more other conversation. So Samson is asking, there's a lot of pressure on many Black professionals to share their income with struggling family members. And this has made it difficult for many of us to build generational wealth. Oh, tell me about it. And I feel like, so it's not just only about that as well. I feel like we also do not put proper structures around our wealth.
Yeah.
And because we don't, a lot of the time when one member of the family passes on, most of that wealth. So a lot of the time, even if the family is not struggling, I've seen it even in African families where you see maybe the husband or whoever passes on, and then that wealth just disappears. You trace that wealth in the next 10 years, you can't find it. And you're like, what happened here? Right? And for me, it's like, which is why for me, starting this entire channel is born out of that. We need to start having this conversation. We need to start talking about what are we doing? What are we doing right? What are the things we are doing wrong? And how do we start collectively becoming more comfortable discussing things about money? Because most people in the home, they don't talk about money. And if we do not start having these conversations, if we do not start making our kids comfortable talking money and understanding wealth, how do they become better at it if nobody's talking about it? If in school, they don't teach them about wealth. If you're at home, nobody's talking about wealth. So it's only when they come out of university and they have their first job, now they get thrown into this new world where they have to figure all this shit out all at once. And it's just a mess. Right? So for me, that's really the goal of this channel. And for me, it's not one professional. It is everyday individual having conversations to say, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what is working for me. This is what's not working for me. And how can we all become a little bit more better with managing our wealth? And I feel like one of it is you have to have structure. Like after every other thing, after you've put a cap on all of these things, you have to have structure. You have to teach your kids about money. Teach them early. And I feel like one of that things is that if you were taught better at money, it will change the trajectory for a lot of us. And I feel like that is one of the things we owe the next generation, to start teaching people about how to better manage money, how to better save, how to better manage their expense. Because if they get better at it early on, it will change their financial projection really, really a whole lot more better. And I feel like one of that challenge as well is where people, they are earning maybe 150K, and then they get a better job that is paying them, let's say 400K. And then they increase their expense in the proportion of their income. And so instead of their income to be better off, instead of them to be better off financially, they are earning a lot more now, but they are worse off than they were when they were even earning 150K. Because now they probably move into a lot more expensive apartment that they can't afford. They are now jumping and doing things that they are not in that place yet to be making those choices. And yeah, I think a lot of people are actually like this conversation around black tax. Okay, I think that might actually be after my next episode on that Excel sheet. I think we will definitely need to explore this black tax conversation a lot more deeper. Somebody said black tax can be really crazy, but you will just have to learn to say no. I don't have, because if you don't, you won't even have enough to make your own life better. And that's true, right? If you are taking care of everybody, the honest truth is that the entire family and everybody will keep struggling financially
for the rest for forever. It's not going to stop.
And I think one reality that hit me was I was looking at a lot of people, and especially like in Lagos, you see people that they've worked for like 20, 30 years, and financially there has not really been any growth. And sometimes scares me, and I'm like, if only they had this conversation around saving or doing something, maybe, right? Because I feel like a lot of the time, because of from where our parents were coming from, where they expected like there was like this defined job security, and the microeconomics of the country was a lot more different. So a lot of things were very stable, very reliable. It made a lot of sense to do it the way they were doing it, right? They were like, okay, no, you definitely get. If you come out of school, you're going to get a job. You know, that thinking of everybody wanting to become a doctor and engineer. But now, right, you can't think that same way, because I'm like, how this person has worked 20, 30 years, and financially they've not been able to really crack it up, even not necessarily like go from 0 to 100, but they've not been able to even move from 0 to 10. And that really is scary, right? And I feel like we need to figure out a way where people can start having those conversations and figure out a way to move people up the ladder gradually, right? And for like what you said, the biggest struggle is that even sometimes when you're earning a lot more money, if you think about inflation, if you think about devaluation, you realize that it seems like you're earning a lot more money, but you're not really moving, which is where that the Nigerian factor also plays that part, right? technically you are earning a lot more money, but inflation now means that that money is really worth a lot more less. And devaluation, because we are also importing a huge amount of the things we are importing, means that cost of goods. I remember, was it a year ago? Just about a year ago, if not more, a bag of rice was probably like 8,000 to 10,000 naira. If you go to the markets today, a bag of rice is over 30,000 naira. That is 2x, 3x the price of rice within just that short amount of time. And people's income are not probably moving 2x, 3x in that same short amount of period. So it's crazy. How do you deal with that, right? I don't have all the answers, but those are some things that we obviously need to figure out. So it's almost like in that rat race where you are just running to always beat inflation, and they're just trying to be above it a bit, because if not, no matter how much more you are earning, if you're not earning like significantly higher every year in that income increment, you are just going to be struggling financially, right? Yeah. Of which a lot of people now are trying to then earn in dollars, which is the dream. That's the dream. But yeah. So yeah, I think a lot of people are actually talking about this black tax situation, and it's really, really interesting. Oh, okay. Interesting stuff. Okay, I think we've actually done quite a lot of time. I think I have one final question for myself, and then if there are any other final thoughts or final questions, we'll take it and then we'll call it a day. Thank you so much, guys. This has been really, really interesting. So I think the final question, I think we've talked about this a bit all through our conversation, has been, if you think about saving for you now and how you will start thinking about it in the long term, do you think about it as saving as a means to invest, saving as a means primarily maybe to fund your emergency needs if and when they come, or saving just basically to cover recurring expense? Because I think one of the things I've seen, right, is a lot of people are purely saving to meet recurring or to meet one-time needs, one-time expense. And a lot of the time, until the next big thing comes, they don't save anymore, right? So it's, okay, hey, I need to pay for this. I save towards it. If there's no big next ticket item to treat immediately, then I'm not really saving until there's another big project, and then I start saving anymore. So how do you guys bucket that for yourself in that sense? For me at the moment, I'll say like I said, is more towards, a lot of it is just going towards investment and emergency fund, but I'd like to hear your thoughts as well. More?
For me, it's the same. I think so. I have, like I said, I have something that I'm saving towards. That's more like an imminent future plan of mine. So I'm saving towards that, and then anything else outside of that is going towards like having a chunk of money for investment. And then investments includes things like just like you said, saving in Nigerian banks doesn't make sense. Mutual funds locally also, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't make any sense. So it's more saving towards investments like stocks, foreign stocks, saving towards even like, agro partnerships, is it agro partnership or agora partnerships, things like that are like, they'll give you some returns in a few months, saving towards things like that as well. So yeah, that's really what it's for. And then having, obviously, most important is having that emergency fund that you can always dig into in case of like unforeseen contingencies.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I see savings as a vehicle for wealth creation, and that's just simply it. I see like I'm not someone who's going to go put money and tie money down somewhere just for the money to sit down, wait for the money to come back, right? I see savings as a vehicle towards getting me to the point where the amount of money or the amount of earnings that I get from my assets can take care of my lifestyle. I think that's the goal, essentially. Getting to that financial freedom where if I know that each year my average expense, like that's just my target right now. If each year my average expense is 5 million to 10 million, how do I get to the point where my assets are able to generate that amount of money on a consistent basis, right? At that point in time, I can and if I want to work for you, I'll decide I want to work for you. But if I don't want to work, I can go do some other. Yeah. But it's also important because I also think of it like I think of I'm a high risk taker, and Francis knows the business that I used to work on that dug me in a hole. But I also think of wealth creation from a standpoint of, because the truth is that if you see savings only as a vehicle of just like making low returns, right? There's only so far that will get you, right? It's almost as though you are waiting till you're in your 40s or 50s before you actually start living life. And people have different opinions about that. Well, the way I think about it is, when, like, in my late 20s, in my early 30s, I want to at least start enjoying that life that I want to enjoy while also creating wealth creation vehicles. So I would also say that, like you said, like everybody should define their risk appetite. And then if you know your risk appetite is high, willing to put your money into startups, put your money into other places that might be more risky. But when it comes to the upside probably makes more sense, at least in the next 5 to 10 years. And you can probably get to financial freedom a lot sooner. So my own savings is a vehicle towards financial freedom.
I think I like that. I think, like what you said, define what your risk appetite is, understand it. And like I think one of the biggest thing is investing in general is not trading, right? It's not day trading. And you need to treat it as, okay, you know what, I need to consistently do this thing over the next 5 to 10 years to get it there. And yes, if you've built it over that 5-10 years, maybe like you said, in 5 years you hit that critical point where you can say, okay, you know what, I can pack my bag now, I can retire, and I can just go chill and enjoy my life. And I think there's one interesting thing that hit me while we guys were just talking as well, is thinking about saving. And I think there's this interesting dynamic that I discovered as well, in the sense of, like what Moyo mentioned, or what some of the conversation we're having earlier, is how that also plays into things like insurance. I know a lot of people don't like that conversation about insurance, but it is a very important and interesting tool, right? Whether it's insurance for your car, because you don't know that if anything happens, when that pothole or something happens, or something, there's an accident or anything happens to that car, it is not coming out of pocket, right? At least that gives you a bit of peace of mind. And I think the other, like one that I cannot even stress enough, in fact, I'm going to even probably have an episode to talk about and stress that enough, is using health insurance as a saving vehicle, because I feel like it's a massive saving vehicle, right? If you think about being able to accessing quality healthcare and what that means in terms of spending money out of pocket, at least for me, I have seen that when you think about health insurance as something that is an investment or a saving tool, even in your portfolio, it is going to save you a whole lot of headache, like in terms of what you will spend going to the hospital all throughout the year. And for a lot of it doesn't cost that much to give yourself that layer of protection. So insurance should also be, in that sense, be thought about as either a saving or an investment vehicle, because it can offer you that protection that if you're spending out of pocket will be way, way more expensive, right? And for people that have health insurance, they know that stuff is life-saving. So if that is one takeaway for anybody here, and most of these health insurance are not that expensive. A couple of them is like 1,000. There's even plans that start with like 1,500, 2,000 every month. And some of them allow you to pay maybe quarterly or even yearly. But the coverage, at least the coverage gives you decent coverage, that at least if you're feeling a certain way, you can go to the hospital and you know at least that you have that cover, right? And you can get medication. Some of it even covers some basic surgery. So I feel like that is another thing to really have in the back of our mind. But yes, this has been a really, really amazing episode. It's so painful that Stockwell couldn't really join it, because the conversation would have probably blown it out of proportion as well. Moyo, thank you so much. This was really interesting. I remember I saw your comment about talking about. I know that's one of the interesting things. I obviously want to break that jinx off. I remember when a lot of people, when I say, "Hey, let's talk about money," are like, "I'm not a professional." I'm like, "No, it's not." It's not that, right? I'm not a professional as well, but how do we start having these conversations that hopefully we all pick one or two things from the entire conversation, and that sticks with us going away with it, and then we can say, okay, you know what? This sounds like something to go explore, to go try. Let me try that and figure out how that works for me. Or somebody said something that was also very interesting. So thank you so much, guys. You guys made this episode really, really interesting for all the conversation. Obviously, I didn't plan for you to dive a bit into black tax, but we also talked about that. And I think that obviously is really, really super interesting conversation that we need to have deeper dive in. Like I said, I've seen the conversation on Twitter about like our banks and all the challenges with the banks. We are going to have one detailed look around the banks and even talk about what value does your bank offer you? Why do you use your bank? Because really, we really need to have that conversation. Why are you using your bank today? Thinking about all the charges and everything, is there any significant value that your bank provides you? But on that note, I wanted to open it up for you guys to share any final thoughts, any final words before we call it a day. Any final thoughts, guys? Mo?
Yeah, Mo can go first.
I think this has been really helpful, even for me. Like I was taking notes as you both were speaking.
Mo, can you hear me? I was saying, do you have any
Yes,
final
I
words, any
can.
final thoughts?
Can you hear
Yeah, I
me?
can
I'm
hear Mo
speaking,
too.
please.
I can hear Mo too,
Oh,
but I
okay.
think
Oh,
Francis,
okay.
there's a lag on Francis's end.
Oh, okay. So I was just saying that I learned a lot from this session. So thank you for including me. And I was just taking notes as both of you were speaking. So thank you so much. It's been a real honor.
Somebody just said something really interesting. Said, thanks for adding insurance. I was forced to start a barrier insurance last year after a loss of a loved one. I would have been paid by the insurance company for the barrier if I had picked the policy a month before. Oh, sorry about that. But yeah, man, I have I have mad appreciation now for insurance now. Sunny, thoughts?
Yeah,
Thoughts?
my final words would be, man, you got this. I think you should do transcripts and Twitter threads of each episode, because especially for people who might not be able to sit down and consume 1 hour 30 minutes. I think because you can go through that and just do a high level transcript. I think that would be really important, right? And like Muyo said, I probably learned more than I have shared today, because that's what conversations facilitate, right? And I think it's really important, these conversations, the things you're mentioning, just like the person said about insurance. I have a lot of friends, interestingly, outside of us that were in the tech sector or people that work in companies, very few people actually have insurance. And whenever something comes, they have to pay out of pocket. Like my friend had typhoid and malaria at some point, and they paid over 100K for a single treatment. And I'm like,
What?
yo, with AXA Mansard, I pay just 48K for the entire year, and I can do a million things literally. That's a super and you can get the same thing for 6K with Reliance HMO. I think Reliance also has a 1.5 plan. But my point would be that we thank you for starting this, right? I think it's really important. But it's also important to also say that we also need to amplify across multiple channels, right? So try to document and just increase the amount of people that can get access to it, because yes, these conversations need to be had, right? This information needs to go out there, right? And it was really fun just talking about this.
Thank you so much, guys. This has been really, really enlightening. You guys have opened up my mind to a lot more. Every single time we do this episode, I'm like, oh, okay, there's something here. And I thank you for my amazing friends, Moyo, and a couple of my amazing friends you guys have been pushing me to say, hey, Francis, you got this, go do this, go do this. So every time, sometimes I want to doubt, is this really it? And oh, okay. So I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe really there's something here. And with every episode and the feedback that we keep getting, it's always really encouraging and insightful to see to see what that conversation leads into next. So thank you so much again, guys. This has been really, really useful. There's so much there's so much to talk about. There's so much if we keep trying to talk around all the topics, we will not leave here. But yes, we've actually spent over an hour. Thank you for everybody that has joined the live session, that has been part of the conversation. We've seen your comments. This has been really, really insightful. What I want to be doing, obviously, is to have these sessions happen consistently every Saturday, 7 p.m. So at least you can even just mark it on your calendar to be able to join and be part of the different conversation. And I think one of the things Sunny said as well, help us spread the word out, right? Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you share with loved ones and say, hey, there was a conversation that is going on. This conversation is going to be happening every Saturday. We'll try to also organize some other sessions apart from the regular weekend ones. But yes, help us also spread the word and be part of the conversation, because the goal is, let's keep having these conversations. Let's learn. Let's figure out how you are doing financially, where are the challenges, and how we can all collectively improve. And I think the biggest takeaway for me today is, if you do not go through the entire channel, watch all the other episodes, if you've never taken out time to do a financial audit, please get one done today. I think it is super, super helpful. It changed my life financially. And 2, start saving today. There is no amount that is too small. Don't tell yourself, oh, I need to wait till I have 50,000 naira or 100,000 naira or 1 million before I can start saving. If it is 500 naira, if it is a 1,000 naira, start saving today. The biggest part of it is in the consistency. Once you build that habit and you can make it happen consistently, then every other thing becomes a lot more easier. You will just find yourself easily increasing the amount if you have more capacity to. And as you earn more, you realize that it becomes a lot more easy. It then becomes a lifestyle. But you want to, first of all, get yourself in the habit of even doing it. So whether it is 1,000 naira every week or every month, just start today. Don't put it off to tomorrow. In fact, start this evening, start this night, start saving now. If you can start doing it now, I can bet you and I can almost guarantee you, that if you look back a year from today, you'll be proud of what you've done. You might not have done 1 billion or 100 million, but at least you'll be like, okay, yes, I can do this. And for a lot of the people around me that have pushed on this journey, a lot of them are looking back and are like, yes, thank you very much. I can see that I can do this now. And they're now pushing themselves to even increase the amounts that they are doing. So start today. And on that note, thank you so much, guys. It has been so insightful. Good night and see you next week.
Thanks for having us.